I recognize the member for Couva South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as I seize the opportunity to join this budget debate here this afternoon. And firstly, I want to take the opportunity to commend the Leader of the Opposition, the member for Siparia, for her outstanding response to the budget presentation of the Minister of Finance in the context of a thought-provoking analysis and her analysis over the state of the economy and the decadence which we are in terms of the state of Trinidad and Tobago as a result of the PNM's government or governance of this country under Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley for the last 8 years. And the presentations or the contributions which have been placed on the record by my colleagues who have spoken in this debate here during the last couple of days, and they put in the contributions of the members for Caroni Central, Kumoto, Manzanilla, Maruga, Tableland, Pointe-a-Pierre, Faizabad, Caroni East, Oropouche West, St. Augustine, Couva North, and Naparima, clearly has demonstrated that we are indeed prepared to govern Trinidad and Tobago once again whenever the general elections are called. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to thank my parliamentary colleagues on both sides for the words of condolences and the sympathies that have been extended to me and my family on the passing of my late mother, Mrs. Tara Jaswanti Indarsingh, who departed this life on the 29th of September 2023 and was laid to rest on the 4th of August 2023 when she was cremated on the banks of the Caroni River. October. And in the many tributes paid by family, friends, and well-wishers during the course of her passing, my mother was recognized as a woman who could have made a dollar stretch, with this skill being perfected out of necessity given the financial hardships faced by many households of her generation. And she and many other mothers and parents have laid the foundation through struggles, selflessness, love, and fiscal management for my family and current generations to enjoy the successes which we can enjoy today. It is in reflecting on this acute ability held by my mother to make an efficient use of households' scarce finances that I lament the budget presentation made by the Minister of Finance, who instead of making a dollar stretch, could only stretch a budget speech with rehashes of spend promises and data incongruent with modern realities so as to make himself appear that he's doing an acceptable job. And, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I'm taken aback in relation to the use of language by the member for Tobago West in relation to how the member spoke to of her political opponents in Tobago. For me, It reflects the disdain, the contempt of which the PNM has for its political opponents in Tobago, and it also reflects a political tabanka that they cannot deal with the blows that was inflicted upon them in the last Tobago House of Assembly elections. And they still continue to tote the feelings which have been clearly demonstrated in the presentation made by the member for Tobago West. Instead of advocating for a sense of camaraderie and unity in dealing with the stakeholders of Tobago, I get a strong feeling that it reeks of what I would call total contempt and arrogance for the people of Tobago. And once, as you are outside of the fold of the PNM and you are politically opposed to them, they cannot see anything for a better and unified Tobago. And the central allocation, or the allocation from the central government as it relates to the budgetary allocation for Tobago signals it is nothing groundbreaking, it is nothing out of the ordinary, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It signals to us that it is business as usual, and indeed, there is no autonomy on the horizon for the people of Tobago. What they want is that the people of Tobago must accept a watered-down autonomy bill, and there must be no robust legislation, really, to govern the relationship between the people of Tobago and the central government of Trinidad. That has been the track record of the People's National Movement in meeting and treating with the people of Tobago. Because it was clearly demonstrated when the minority leader in the Tobago House of Assembly stated that the Chief Secretary should not complain about the budgetary allocation. And for me, that statement is indicative that they want the continued abuse of the people of Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And in relation to the affairs or the outline which has been stated in the budget presentation by the Minister of Finance, it has clearly demonstrated to us on this side, and I think the people of Trinidad and Tobago, that the issues on the sister isle still continue to exist and still continue to afflict the people of Tobago after 8 years of our wee boy being the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. This sea bridge dysfunction has not eliminated itself, or it has not gone away, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And it is a matter of deep concern for us in the opposition because frequent cancellation, delays, unreliable ferry services have serious consequences for the economy of Tobago. It has also had an impact on tourism. The sea bridge's unreliability negatively affects Tobago's tourism, a critical source for revenue on the island, and tourists and investors alike are deterred by the uncertainty of travel to and from Tobago. leading to a decline in economic opportunities and growth. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I thought that the member for Tobago West would have addressed or sought to address some of these issues which are indeed impacting on her constituents and those of the member for Tobago East also. In fact, it is afflicting the entire population of Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Nothing about agriculture and commerce and the inability to transport goods and produce efficiently between the islands has dire consequences for Tobago's agriculture and commercial sectors or commerce sectors.
Teacher.
Farmers and businesses face significant challenges in getting their produce to market in a timely manner. What about the economic growth? Because without reliable transportation links, Tobago's potential for economic growth and diversification will remain severely hampered, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And then, what about the air bridge issue?
Nothing.
Again, it is symptomatic in the context of what I've stated as it relates to the sea bridge issue. Flight cancellation, delays, fears, and so on. High fears, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And we heard nothing about tourism competitiveness, transparency and accountability, and investing in Tobago's future. Instead, we heard of that political tabanka. And you know what, Mr. Deputy Speaker? The member for Tobago West, in her act of desperation, attempted to wade in the UNC about the UNC assembling members outside of the Parliament in budget debate before the budget presentation commenced, and bordered on accusing the UNC of creating a sense of divisiveness along racial lines in Trinidad and Tobago.
She blatantly said it.
And
Again, members, please. Only Couva South is recognized at this time, please. Only Couva South. Proceed.
And I want to tell the member for Tobago West, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the people of Trinidad and Tobago who voted for the United National Congress in the last local government elections and who continue to support the United National Congress, and by extension the people of Trinidad and Tobago, can indeed see through the utterances of the member for Tobago West. And today, I condemn such sleight of hand utterances designed to create hatred and divisiveness in the society along racial lines. The United National Congress is one of the most unified political parties that represents the diversity of Trinidad and Tobago under the leadership of Kamla Persad Bissessa, and no member of the UNC on this side we will have none of that divisiveness which is being promoted here. And I will sit down and allow any one of them to get up and tell me that if indeed that is what the PNM stands for in promoting divisiveness and racial hatred and tension in Trinidad and Tobago.
Standing order 48-6, please.
Okay, member, I'm giving you a little leeway. Proceed. Just be careful as you continue.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I am not being irrelevant. I am being relevant in the context of what emerged in this Parliament today, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And enough is enough. Enough is enough. That is our role and responsibility in the opposition and members on this side. We must not sweep things under the carpet. When we stand to speak, we must have the strength and fortitude to call a spade and call out the PNM whenever they go outside of the established norms and stray and attempt to create this divisiveness in the society.
Wickedness.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, and as the member for Couva South, I represent a constituency, and all of us on this side, the 19 members, we represent constituencies with a sense of equality, and here every creed and race find an equal place. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, I will move on because after 8 budget presentations, we are into the 9th budget presentation from the member for Degomati Northeast, the Minister of Finance. And I just want to present to you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, a snapshot of some of the headlines which have been making the rounds in Trinidad and Tobago over the last couple of months. And only last Saturday, in the Express newspaper, last Saturday, the 7th of October, 2023, guards slain on duty, gunshots ring out at Brentwood Mall, 3 in court for bank workers' death. Municipal police hold vigil for murdered children. Supermarket owners urged to form alliance against crime. Murder rate worsens, 60 killed in September. Detection rate stagnant, 18 more murders than September 2022. Mr. Deputy Speaker, KFC delivery drivers are being robbed of chicken and chips. Places of worship are being robbed. Horses are being stolen. Citizens are being robbed, raped, and brutalized in their homes, murdered. Home invasions have become the order of the day. Extortion and gang violence is the order of the day. Persons are shutting down their businesses and migrating. And when businesses are shut down, persons continue to lose their jobs. Mr. Deputy Speaker, infrastructure has collapsed in this country to the point that in every nook and cranny, driving your motor vehicle in this country has become like if you're navigating an obstacle course. And of course, citizens cannot get water in their taps. In fact, the headlines was recently, suffering in Cedras, frustrated residents without supply. And even in recent times, you could never even get something as simple as a bird paper in this country. And one headline was, fire service crisis, too many stations without appliances, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And that will lead me straight into some issues that was unfolded in this debate. And the front page of today's newspaper was one entitled, splashed broadly across the newspapers and headlines. And I referred to the Minister of National Security in the member for Laventille West, and the headlines was, Heinz hurt. Minister says it pained him to see video of woman dragged in city street, apologizes to all victims of crime. Madam, Mr. Deputy Speaker, you know when an elections is in a general elections is on the horizon. Probably, Mr. Deputy Speaker, in the last retreat that they had down in Cruising, their public relations handlers told them that indeed they are under pressure. They have failed the people of Trinidad and Tobago. When the Minister of National Security came to deliver, make his input or contribution in this budget presentation, he was hamstrung. In fact, he was straitjacketed. Apparently, they produced or they prepared a speech for him, and they told him don't go out of line because he has been an abysmal failure as it relates to the handling of crime. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, the citizens of this country, they do not want apologies after 8 years, they want action. And you know what would have given, probably would have given the population of this country a sense of satisfaction yesterday? Not apology. Because any time a government is elected into office, it is to look after the well-being of its citizenry and improve the quality of life and standard of living. And if into your 9th year you come to apologize to the country, it tells you, or it tells me, in fact, that you are trying to soften or create a soft landing so when the general elections are called, the people will buy into your propaganda. The only thing will work is either you resign or call the general elections, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because the population has had enough. And whether it is for roads, whether it is for a lack of job creation, whether it is for hospitals, the education system, the lack of opportunities for young people, the collapsed sea bridge, the collapsed air bridge, the inability people now going back to the days of barrel and bucket under the member for Lopino Bonnet West. Nothing will save you, and we will accept no apology from any minister of government, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, we on this side, as I said, we will not fall victim to any crocodile tears or any half-baked apology. Because we will never forget, it is the Minister of National Security who told the country, who told all abiding citizens, it was not his job to make people. It was not his job to make citizens feel safe. And he could check with Fazir Mohammed if he needs. If he needs, I will not attempt to legitimize the truth. He could check with Fazir Mohammed to legitimize. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, it leads me to the very important issue too, because of whether there is a crisis in the fire services of Trinidad and Tobago. Because as I said, for 2023, if my data is right, I think that 13 persons have already died as a result of fires. Unfortunate, tragic. We do not like when those situations occur or unfold itself. But it is our responsibility, Minister, to get you to do your work. That is the role of the opposition. This is not about politicizing. This is making a case for voiceless persons who have been harmed, who have been traumatized, families which have been traumatized as a result of the inaction and incompetence of the Prime Minister and the entire cabinet. It is not the opposition's fault whether there are not enough fire tenders or not enough breathing apparatus and so on for firefighters who are going beyond the call of duty in serving the people of this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And in some instances where these fires have occurred and the 13 individuals have died, in some instances, persons have died because fire stations within the range of victims were not properly equipped. And yesterday, the Minister of National Security, in his wisdom, maybe well-intentioned, but I do not know if he got his facts wrong or he was not properly briefed and so on. I am just asking these questions in the context of the law-abiding citizens, the tax-paying public of this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as it relates to the state of affairs within the fire services of Trinidad and Tobago. Because the minister told, and I stand to be corrected, that fire stations throughout the length and breadth of Trinidad and Tobago, they are properly equipped, and also they have the appropriate breathing apparatus. He said every fire station in Trinidad and Tobago has the appropriate breathing apparatus. And then, being as responsible as I am, I looked and I came across a social media post where a fire officer by the name of Keon J. Guy, who I am reliably informed was attached to the San Juan fire station, took to social media, and I quote, "While I sit at home and attempt to recover from partial thickness burns to my face, injuries I received due to the lack of critical component of PPE breathing apparatus, the Minister of National Security uses the cover of Parliament to falsely indicate that every station has its full complement of breathing apparatus sets. The only thing worse than being injured in the line of duty and then being forced to line up at public institutions for assistance is the minister's false statements, which unfortunately means that no meaningful relief can be expected. The lives and quality of life of both fire officers and the citizens they have sworn to protect are unfortunately put at further risk when efforts are focused on covering up critical shortcomings as opposed to dealing with them head-on." End of quote, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Indictment. Guilty.
And that leads me to the very important issue. Someone in their winding up, the Minister of Finance, probably not someone, but the Minister of Finance or some one on the government side should get up and tell us really and truly in the interest of all of our citizens of this country, indeed, whether the status of breeding apparatus in the Northern Division are as follows. Shakarama Foundation, 0. In terms of breeding apparatus sets, 4 rows, 1. Woodbrook, 0. Belmont, 0. Mova, 0. San Juan, 2. Santa Cruz, 0. Tunapuna, 2. Arima, 2. Sani Grande, 2. The headquarters, 4. And I am reliably informed that at least the minimum should be at least 4 sets of breeding apparatus in each fire station, Mr. Deputy Speaker. This is woeful. This is incompetence. This is a lack of care. After having the full knowledge that 13 deaths were as a result of fires in this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the government needs to act. And the Prime Minister, in responding to a question that I posed some months ago in this very said House, accused me of politicizing the issue. This is not about politicizing the issue. This is a responsible opposition which has a sense of duty and care for the ordinary citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And if it means raising it again and again in and outside of this Parliament, we will fulfill our duty on behalf of the voiceless. And that is why the opposition led by Kamla Persad-Bissessar went throughout the nook and cranny of Trinidad to engage in meaningful discussions in relation to our level of preparation in responding to the government in relation to this budget presentation, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, today is the 10th of October. Is also, we are commemorating World Mental Health Day. And mental health is a universal human right. But under 8 years into their 9th year of governing Trinidad and Tobago, it is a fact that mental health issues have continued to escalate. And we must ask why. Crime is causing anxiety and trauma. Unprecedented job losses are resulting in mental stress and agony. Record retrenchment, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Young people have no opportunities. And I want to tell you that the leading cause of mental health stress in Trinidad and Tobago is the People's National Movement, led by Dr. Keith Rowley and his incompetent government for the last 8 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, the budget 2024, titled Building Capacity for Growth and Diversification, they are presented 8. There has been no economic growth and diversification in this country for the last 8 years. And then they want us to believe, the Minister of Finance wants us to believe that after 96 months, 12/8 and 96, that economic growth and diversification will start in the 97th month. They want us to believe that. Mr. Deputy Speaker, from where I sit, diversification is merely a buzzword with this government. And it is doomed to fail, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because, Mr. Deputy Speaker, the budget does not encourage any forward thinking. It does not focus on proper, what we would call, thorough investment in education and skills development. It promotes neither sustainable practices or focuses on sustainable practices, as my colleague, the member for Carinese, would focus in relation to the environment and future generations and so on, Mr. Deputy Speaker. There's an absence of a clear roadmap for economic growth. It is a disappointment that which cannot be understated, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And all I could say is that the people of Trinidad and Tobago must know that if our economy is to grow, then the PNM government must go, because mediocrity is a luxury we cannot ill afford, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Labour, I wouldn't say much on the Minister of Labour, because he did not have much to say yesterday during his presentation. But Mr. Deputy Speaker, the Minister of Labour in his presentation alluded to the minimum wage, and he alluded to the minimum wage and the industrial relations front and so on. And he said that the increase in the minimum wage helps to guarantee those of the lowest end of earning who will help to meet their basic need, and it will help the most vulnerable in the society, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, the trade union movement have rejected in a very unified approach the minimal, or what we would call the meager increase in the minimum wage. Because we in the opposition, we stand for the blood, sweat and tears of workers. We have always been on the side of workers. We have always agitated for improving their standard of living and their quality of life, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And what is of concern to us in the opposition will be what will be the realistic power of this increase to workers earning the minimum wage. Because in the upcoming fiscal year, the Regulated Industries Commission have already signaled, because apparently political pressure is being applied from the central government, that there will be impending rate increases as it relates to water and electricity. Property tax will be imposed on the entire population, and it will continue to erode in terms of the ability of minimum wages workers to survive on a daily basis, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And just to illustrate, and I quote the position adopted by the joint trade union movement, and I quote, "While some may argue that it is better than no increase at all, one must look at the fact that the figure is woefully low given our economic realities. The rental of a two-bedroom apartment goes at a minimum of $2,500 per month, which means that workers are left with a balance of $1,053. In other words, the government is asking the majority of the population in this country to live on $1,053 per month. And that is why we have continued to articulate that there should be a discussion around a subsistence wage or a living wage, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And the United National Congress, when we return to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, we will facilitate discussion via social dialogue and tripartism to have a discussion that is centered around what we would call a subsistence wage or a living wage to facilitate meeting and treating with the vulnerable in Trinidad and Tobago, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, then the minister attempted to piggyback on what was presented by the Minister of Finance as it relates to the state of industrial relations and the collective bargaining process. And the Minister of Finance, during his budget presentation, boasted that the trade union movement accepted a 4% wage increase. What he did not tell you is that the Prime Minister and the Minister of Finance and the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago hijacked the collective bargaining process. It was not free, it was not fair, it was not independent. It was negotiated in the public domain, with both of them consistently moaning and groaning about the size of the public sector and the need to reduce the wage bill in Trinidad and Tobago and the implications for outstanding back pay and so on, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I want to tell you that also the trade unions understood that if they went to this special tribunal, because the last time the data and the history will tell you that when trade unions went to the special tribunal, they got less than, I think, 1% per year. So based on the history and based on the antecedents and understanding what it means in sending a matter to the special tribunal, it was one of really being bullied and cornered. So it was never free and fair collective bargaining. But you know what, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Also, the minister should have addressed the very important issue, because this is for a 5-year period, and there is an outstanding period that is to be addressed in the context of 2019 to 2023 and beyond, and what will be the government's approach to the entire collective bargaining process, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Will it be fair? Will it be independent? Or will it be allowed in the context of the chief personnel officer will have a true role in meeting and treating with the unions in Trinidad and Tobago along the lines of what we would call the collective bargaining process, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And in that context, Mr. Deputy Speaker, there was a headline because they spoke under the broad heading of industrial relations and meeting and treating.
Yes. You have just about 2 minutes of your initial speaking time. You have an additional 10 minutes. Do you care to avail yourself?
Certainly, Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Proceed.
And they spoke about industrial relations. Good industrial relations practices will tell you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that you need to meet and treat with unions along the line of mutual respect, not bullying and intimidating and negotiating in the public domain. And today, I am of deep concern. It has caused me a great sense of trepidation, because yesterday there was an article in the Trinidad Guardian that which states that a TALPA source, it read that pilots are resigning as the state moves to decertify TALPA source. Pilots resigning as state moves to decertify union, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And that is shades of the PNM since 1965, anti-worker, anti-union, anti-people. Mr. Deputy Speaker, one only has to throw their minds back to the administration of Prime Minister Manning, when there was a move to decertify the Transport and Industrial Workers Union at PTSC and decertify the Communication Workers Union at TSTT, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I call upon the Minister of Finance, and also who has the line responsibility for Caribbean Airlines, and the Minister of Labour, if he has any decency and respect for the trade union movement in this country and workers alike in this country, clear the air on whether the government is moving to decertify the Pilots Association, who are the recognized majority union. And indeed, if they are decertified because of the high-handedness and disrespect for the workers of this country, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I assure you that an incoming UNC government, within due process and the means within the labor laws of Trinidad and Tobago, will re-establish a recognized majority union status for the body or association representing the Pilots Association. And Mr. Deputy Speaker, very quickly I move on to the state of affairs as it relates to this $4,000 for public retirees or retirees who have served the people of Trinidad and Tobago in the context of the public service, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker, if you listen to the Minister of Finance, you will think that this $4,000 one-off payment is the best thing since sliced bread. But I want to read into the record, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I'm trying to just find my notes, and I think Madam Speaker has returned to the chair. Madam Speaker. And I want to ask the Minister of Finance, because in 2019, if you read page 40 of the budget presentation of the Minister of Finance, I quote, "I propose to review public service pensions with a view to indexing these pensions at an appropriate level. This review will be completed in fiscal 2020. Madam Speaker, this again is a minister of promises, a minister who continues to mislead the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So when he comes and he tells public servants, retirees, take $4,000 as a one-off payment, what it really means is the minister has been deceptive. The minister has failed public retirees, and I ask public servants who have retired, and today I challenge the minister to tell us what is the status as it relates to reviewing the public service pensions. Where is the report, Minister? Your deception, we will not tolerate it, Madam Speaker. And in that regard, our old age pensioner, a retiree, sent me a WhatsApp message last Friday, 10 o'clock in the night, 10 o'clock, concerned about the deception of the Minister of Finance. And he said, and it read, it is over 10 years since old age pensioners have received an increase. The last time this was done was under the government of Prime Minister Kamla Persad-Bissessar. While many government retirees, he said, while many have also benefited by moving up to $3,500, there are those who were above that point and have received nothing. They have received nothing for 20 years now, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And I retired in 2002, and I believe the last increase was given only to those government retirees who retired on or before 1999. Mr. Deputy Speaker, and he lamented in his message, pensioners have to pay bills, groceries, car, gas, rent, mortgage, medical bills, and so on. And why is there no apparent consideration for pensioners, and why this government has consistently neglected government retirees for the last 8 years, Mr. Deputy Speaker? Madam Speaker, this increase or this payment of $4,000 to retirees, government retirees, while we welcome any money for any person in this country because of the pain and suffering It is a one-time mama guy, Madam Speaker, and we reject the deception of the Minister of Finance, Mr. Deputy Speaker. And then, Madam Speaker, I have to deal with the very important issue of the National Insurance Fund and the board, the National Insurance Fund, and this system has been allowed to rot. It has been allowed to decay because of the inaction of the Prime Minister in his entire cabinet. We must not only train our guns on the Minister of Finance because they were warned.
So, member, so it may have been automatic to say that, but I'd ask you, in the whole context, I think that's unparliamentary. You can do better than that. So withdraw that and find another way to say it, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can assure you I will not knock it on him. It is important. Certainly, I will never go against your guidance on the way. I withdraw. I withdraw, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it is important for us to address this very critical issue of the status of the National Insurance Fund and to plug that $1 billion gap and more. And we have not heard from the Minister of Finance because they granted 2 amnesties. We were not told how much revenue that brought in to the fund. We also were not told what they have done with the compliance department as it relates to delinquent and errant employers in this country. And at the end of the day, they could tell you, they could deceive you and tell you that we are engaged in consultation with the people of Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to the way forward, but it is already a done deal. The consultations are ongoing fast. The government has decided that they will move or increase the retirement rate or the age to access this pension to 65. But what they are not telling the population is that if you take it at 60 or 61 or 62 and so on, you will reduce approximately 6 years of your full 6% of your full entitlement, and you will have what we would call a reduced national insurance pension. That is this thing in the tail that they are hiding from the population of Trinidad and Tobago, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, very quickly too, as I come to my final couple of minutes in my presentation, I am concerned, the opposition is concerned about the status of the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority. We reject it because it will lead to further unemployment in Trinidad and Tobago. The government has not said what will be the method of employment. They are creating 2 parallels in terms of they are reducing the established public service, and they want to create a political public service in Trinidad and Tobago where they want to ensure that there is employment by contract, where ministers will have the sole prerogative and authority to create political party groups in the new Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority. And that is why we are saying we reject the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority. And from a constituency point of view, Madam Speaker, the woes are numerous. It has been stated by all of my colleagues. Potholes, poor infrastructure, no water. The education system is in shambles. I hope the Minister of Education can find money to build the Sonilado Early Childhood Education Center. I hope that the Minister of Works and Transport can find the appropriate monies to fix the Phoenix Park Road or the UTT Road. You hear my good friend who is about to enter in this debate, the Minister of Trade and Industry, who has the responsibility for the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate. She will come, the Minister, Madam Speaker, will come during her debate and boast about the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate and hundreds of millions of dollars. But what she will not tell you is this sad state of the road that leads to the Phoenix Park Industrial Estate, a road that is traversed by all, which leads you to the port of Point Lisas. It leads you to the UTT campus. It leads you to the Saboneta station, fire station, Madam Speaker, and also the Point Lisas Business Park. But you know, recently, when they carried the Prime Minister to turn the sod for the solar park, where they got the name wrong and they don't even know the geography of Trinidad and Tobago. If they want help, they could ask me. Yeah. Madam Speaker, the Phoenix Park Road should be built by the government of Trinidad and Tobago.
The Minister of Trade and Industry.